Right, this is a continuation of the first one. I'm sorry I ran out of time on my last file. Yes, we were at load suspects. Load suspects brings in rand and it uses a switch file to give the different text informations of who the murderer was. This is used in the body room. So it bases it off of the value that rand holds, and you can see it'll tell you a few torn pages or powder stains or the small damaged pocket watch like we saw, and then an error break at the end. Then it just returns whatever has been filled into text, so whichever one of these has been filled. Now the main, these are the includes and usings for the main. The main starts by setting up the random generators. This all happens before the game starts, or before the user has any input of the game. A generator to hold the suspect number, the room, and the weapon. It loads all the suspects by passing in generate suspects as well to choose which one would be the killer, like we just saw. Yeah. A vector of the rooms is called in by using load rooms that we saw recently as well, and then to set which of the different room texts and which of the different weapon texts we pass in generate weapon or generate room using a function that we'll see in rooms. Then we call an introduction, which was outside at the end of the main here, the introduction of the game. Set up a room ID and a user input, and then this is used to get any room texts to investigate them or go back, and it also passes in the room ID to the input value with all of the necessary pieces, the room's ID, the input suspects, and the 3 generated pieces. This also holds the room ID to 13, causing a break, so as we saw earlier, if it goes to deduct and you win or lose the game, it'll pass room ID, it'll change the ID into 13 and pass it back here, and this will break the game. Oh, and there's a small system pause here just to stop the game from breaking quickly, so you can still actually see the output message. The random generator simply generates a random number depending on the values passed in through low and high. It's the formula for it. This is used in 3 occasions to generate a random suspect between the values of 0 and 5, or 1 and 6, to choose a random room between 1 and 9, and to choose a random weapon between 1 and 9. The room function this is the function that sets up holding the different text fields and the booleans to choose which text fields to use. As you can see, you have the room text and alt text, and then you have the weapon text and alt text, which are used if you use the investigate option in the rooms, and 2 booleans deciding on which room is which. Then we have the methods here of actually getting the room text, which checks is room, and if is room is correct, then, or if is room is true, you get the alternate, the murder room text. If not, the normal text. Same way for the weapons, using the is weapon boolean, and a way to change the 2 booleans from true or false, the set room and set weapon functions, which is what we saw back here in the main, using the set room and set weapon on the generate room or generate weapon random integers. So example, generate room chooses the value 3, then this says rooms with the ID value 3, set that one to true. So this would set to true, and then when you're getting the room text, it checks and it is the alternate room text, so that would call in the murder room information, or the murder room text for the 3rd room. Then we have the suspect information, which is the vector of the suspects set as, and the 4 categories of questions for each one. The description of who they are when they come up to you, this is for questioning the suspects, and then the 3 question answers. this simply just takes in all of them for each character, their description, the who, how, why, and pushes them back into the vector, and then the next four, and the next four, and so on. And at the end returns the suspects piece to the right area. Finally, the suspect text. This is set up an enumerator for an enumerator for this as well, suspend, but just to make it a bit more easier. The suspect text area initializes suspend, but sets the ID to -1 to start off, sets a boolean of loop true, will be used in a minute, and an error control boolean. It's the information for going into the room to see the suspects. Now here is very similar to the way input was set up. It'll choose, it's a loop that bit runs off of the input of the ID. If the ID is -1, it means no one's been chosen, so it puts the message red, orange, yellow, blue of who to pick, and it will set loop to true. So this way, if the ID pardon me, if the ID is anything greater than -1 and the loop, which means that it's asked a question and it's come back to, someone has chosen a suspect, asked questions, and it's gone back to choose the suspect. This is if the thing is anything over than -1, it means they've after chosen a suspect, red, orange, yellow, green, or such. And if the loop is true, we output this message, which is the questions for who, or the questions to ask the suspects, who, how, why, or to go back. This one here without the loop is to simply ask the questions after you've already asked one. So if you ask who and it outputs that message and it goes back, you don't want this entire message being called out a second time or a third time or every time you ask something. So that's just set there. Another for loop to pass everything as upper. In here, this is changing it so that if the suspect's input is red or orange or whichever they've chosen, it's changing the ID number 0 to 5, and back will break it out of the situation, and then error control there. All this happens if the ID is equal to -1. This is choosing which person you go to. If the ID isn't chosen -1, it means you've already chosen a suspect to question, and it will go to the questions, the who, how, or why, and back, and each one of these will call in the suspects, passing in the ID number and the actual question. So an example would be, if it's -1, you haven't chosen someone, so we would choose red, which sets the ID to 0. Now, because it's not it's not -1 anymore, we go down to here, and we would choose who, and it would call suspects, passing in the ID value, which would be 0, and call in the question piece, who, and same for how and why, and then back will change back to -1 to go back to the previous menu. All this done in different error loops. So that's the code. I had an outside party look through the code and they found two major problems. I can find them here that I had to fix. One of them was in the input folder, or the input file, sorry. Yes. Well, the outside party found that the input menu for investigating or going back when you were inside the rooms wasn't loading correctly, so I had to fix that. I found out it was actually just a positioning problem. It was this little area here. I had it positioned down at the bottom here where the actual investigate or back functions happen, but for some reason it wouldn't read in the right order. So I tried it in multiple different areas and I found that it worked most and the highest here. The other main error I had was the random. to start off with. I couldn't, when the outside part was playing it, they found that each time the random went around, I was actually choosing the same 3 numbers each time. And it took me a while to find out online how to fix this, but it was actually that I needed to include this srand piece and a C time here, and once that worked, it reset it each time and would give me a different value in the right ranges. There was only really one other small one, which was in deduction. I had deduction set up excuse me. Deduction set up so that the questions or the inputs would have to be ints rather than values, and I had set out the menus with an integer in front of each one, but it wasn't completely obvious that you had to put in an input instead of a string value. So the outside part I was putting in a string value and it was continuously looping, so I just added in an enter number piece at the bottom of each menu just to make sure it's 100% clear it has to be in a menu or an integer instead of string. They were the only serious control errors that I found from someone else playing it. If I had more time, I would work a bit more on 1 or 2 pieces, such as the deduction. I would have liked to get that into its own file, the same way I have suspect text and body text, and just have it called from in here. And the for loops that I was using, I use frequently around the place here to cast whatever a user's input is into all uppercase. I would have liked to try and get that into its own file as well, that I can call from externally, rather than have to write the same code each time in different places. But as my knowledge goes that we're going to be using this for the next CA, upgrading it in different places, I'll try my best to add it in there. So that's my project. Sorry it's in 2 parts. I'm running off the trial screencast, so I only had a limit of 15 minutes per video. That's it then. Thanks for watching.